The Selfish Path to Romance. Download Chapter 1 for free at drkenner.com and at amazon.com.
We all have these terrible stories to get over, and you...
It's not true. Some of us have great stories, pretty stories that take place at lakes with boats and friends and noodle salad. What makes it so hard is not that you had it bad, but that you're that pissed that so many others had it good.
No.
And that's from As Good as It Gets, and it sounded like he was getting a little too close to home for her. And you want to look in your own life. What do you focus on? What do you weigh, W-E-I-G-H, is really important. And if you seem to be making yourself into a victim by focusing on, oh, I've got this ache or pain, or, oh, everything bad happens to me, and there are good things in your life, but you're not taking stock of them, then it's time to sit back and figure out what's going on. What's going on in myself that I'm not weighing the good stuff as important, or even as more important than the bad stuff, assuming that the bad stuff isn't life-threatening stuff. And you want to make sure you're not making yourself into a victim, because it's your own life, it's your only life, and you don't want to throw it away, you want to enrich it. And it's not that you can switch overnight, it's that you want to do the thinking so that you can genuinely value the positive things more and recognize them when they happen in your life, the good stuff. I'm Dr. Ellen Kenner, and my show is The Rational Basis of Happiness. I'm a clinical psychologist here to answer your calls and questions on any concerns that are keeping you awake at night, making you feel frustrated with yourself. And right now I want to turn to the phones and welcome Frank. Frank, you're dealing with some anger?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Tell me what you would like help with.
Well, is it Dr. Kenner?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Kenner. What I think the foundation of it is a general question concerning what I'm recognizing in my life is that things, for example, with my kids or with others, that, things that can make me angry, I'm recognizing that it's not necessarily about the present circumstance, but it's related to perhaps some unresolved wounds, if you will, from the past that have gone unresolved, and I'm looking for ways to, I think recognizing it to begin with is a big step. But
huge step. The honesty involved in your saying what you just did, if I were your child, how old are your children?
I have 3 teenagers.
3 teenagers. If I were one of your kids and you were snapping at me and you looked at me, maybe not in that moment because it's hard to shift gear when you're when it's spilling out, but if you either told them in advance or after the fact and said, something, I've been so hard on you and I owe you a huge apology, and the way I want to pay my apology is to work on myself and change so I don't continue doing this to you. I have some unresolved things from my past, and if it's abuse, I'm assuming it's some sort of abuse or
very severe background.
Very severe. And do they know about it at all?
Yes.
Oh, your kids know that you were abused?
Yeah, they don't know in detail that I...
Yeah, and sometimes... Go ahead.
That I lived on the streets and, whatnot, but...
With your parents?
Excuse me?
You lived on the street with your parents?
I did, indeed.
Okay, so they have a little information. Do they have a few graphic pictures? Meaning...
what do you mean?
If my father told me he lived on the streets, I can picture him maybe living on the streets in Florida where it's warm and people are, giving him handouts and panhandling. Or I can think of him living on the streets where people are beating him up and he never knows who's going to hit him as a little kid, or maybe do a lot worse, And do they know how bad it was for you?
Well, I don't think they could ever know how bad it was.
No, that is true. That is true. Nor could I.
I've certainly written about it. I write poetry and I write and whatnot, and they have a pretty
okay, that's what I meant. If they have at least some context, they don't have to have all the graphic details because it could cause them nightmares. Why? But can you give me? But if you, my first point is, if you tell them in advance, hey, if I snap, I want you to know that it's not you, that 90% of this, if that's the case, 90% of this is that it triggered something in me from my past. I'm working on it. I want to work with you so that you don't take it as if it's you that's the problem. It's me, and I'm working on it, and it's really hard to do, but I want to work with you on this. Maybe we can set up a signal system. So if you
I think that's good advice. Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
I just related, and that is that do you think that unresolved, deep-seated anger could lead to severe, debilitating depression? And once that anger is resolved, do you think that depression could be also eradicated from one's life?
Well, again, I would need some details, but in pattern, I would say absolutely that if you have unresolved emotional issues that are just bottled up in you that you don't know how to resolve, or you don't know...
forgiveness, and then how would you recommend going about
forgiveness is a little different. You mean forgiving other people?
Yes.
Yeah, let me deal with the depression question first.
All right.
And then a few moments on forgiveness, because I know we have a limited time here. With the depression, depression is anger. The thought behind anger, or the thoughts behind anger, are in the ballpark of it's not fair, it's not just, it's your injustice detector. And sometimes our anger is off base because we expect the world to be served to us on a silver spoon, and we think it's not fair, but really we need to work. We need to put in effort. Sometimes the anger is totally justified. You were abused, and your parents or other people in your life really tried to damage you as a kid, to damage your mind, your self-confidence, your goal setting, and you need to work through that. And you don't forget...
When you say work through that, could you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, you need to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and how. You need to figure out who did the harm to me, so that you don't draw the conclusion that the whole world is like those abusive people. Well, you know what I think,
Doctor? I think that when a child is abused, I think the tremendous recurrent pain occurs not necessarily from what happened to them, even though what happened to the child is a tragedy, but what they believed about what happened to them.
Yes, that is true too. If they make it an identity issue that I am a bad person, there are 4 ways it can damage them. They can conclude a premise about themselves and a global conclusion about themselves, that I am worthless, I am unlovable, I am no good, I am stupid. Any of those type of ideas are attacks on whom? Themselves, right?
Right.
So it can do damage to your self-esteem, that you don't feel worthy. It can do damage to your view of other people. This is the second category, that other people can never be trusted. Other people will always hurt me, or other people, I'm totally dependent on them, and yet they can bite me any time. It can do damage that way. It can do damage to your view of the world. What's the use? Why bother? You can't get anywhere in life because every time you try to get ahead, someone cuts you down. And abuse can do damage to your view of your future. Why bother? And that's where you get depressed. People who are depressed have basically said, the loss is so great, and I don't know how to fix it, and I give up. It's like just...
And how do you overcome that, especially when it goes
I'm going to give you... Yeah, go ahead.
Intimacy things.
It's going to hit intimacy greatly. Your honesty is going to work for you, and I know we're wrapping up right now. Go to my website, drkenner.com, drkenner.com, and look for the book Mind Over Mood. There are also books, I don't think I have this on the website, but the Anger Control Workbook by Matthew McKay and Peter Rogers that you can look up. There are other anger books too. You want to be able to get the help. And cognitive therapy, you can go to my website and look up the cognitive therapy address and find a cognitive therapist near you. Listen, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm Dr. Ellen Kenner, and has anyone ever picked on you? I know we were just talking about abuse, but maybe you were teased by the class bully. Or maybe even as an adult, someone is picking on you. Or maybe it's a family member. You did so much work planning a family vacation, and yet your kids or your wife says you didn't do enough, or you got us a lousy room near a noisy ice machine. After the break, I will be talking with Dr. Andy Bernstein about what? About dealing with people who love to complain. What do you do if you have a complainer in your life, or if you're that complainer? I'm Dr. Ellen Kenner on the Rational Basis of Happiness.
Here's an excerpt from The Selfish Path to Romance, the Serious Romance Guidebook by clinical psychologist Dr. Ellen Kenner.
Another virtue that makes you lovable is honesty. Honesty is the refusal to fake reality. It is essential in a romantic relationship. Without it, you cannot have trust, which means you cannot rely on the character of your partner. How many times have you heard unhappy partners say, "I can't trust her," or "he broke my trust"? People typically lie for temporary gain, in the hope that by denying reality, they can temporarily recreate it based on their wishes. But it can't be done, and you can't escape knowing that fact, even if you can deceive your partner temporarily. You are making yourself unlovable, and privately, you will not admire yourself.
You can download Chapter 1 for free by going to drkenner.com, and you can buy the book at amazon.com.